Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to the Wild Tangent channel, and thanks for tuning in. This is an educational channel. We review great theories, discoveries, and concepts that you probably aren't familiar with, things that have been suppressed, and things that you have to do a lot of digging to uncover, and especially designed for people who are inclined to do digging. I appreciate the truther movement and what you've done in your digs to help out um, the rest of us in moving through this info war. However, um, the digging needs to go deeper, uh, and in particular, going back further through the ages and maybe a little bit further into our spiritual depths. And so that is, I guess, my contribution or attempted contribution here. And this is a new feature called Your Blind Side, where I go over just things I encounter in my own research that I think might help movement. I talk a lot about, you know, the mistakes that I think are being made by the movement. I was thinking about it in terms of the emperor wears no clothes. And I really feel like that's kind of the situation that we're in today here with the info war. So many people are just not doing their homework on their holy books, in particular the Bible. Um, they're accepting it at face value, what they've been told about it, and they're not trying to figure out who wrote this, where did this come from, um, not giving it the level of scrutiny that it deserves in terms of everything else that you're digging into in the info war. You're, um, you know, I guess the methods are a little bit different, and it's maybe a little bit more daunting to go way back into ancient times and to try to figure out the origin of these things. But there's been a lot of work done, and there's a lot of very compelling evidence, what I would consider to be proof. If you are a follower of the 17th letter, or even a follower of any of the, you know, kind of devolution or any of the kind of control, the Patriots are in control um, forms of things, then you've been accustomed to working with, okay, I don't have any absolute direct proof, but just adding up all the coincidences, they're just the proof is overwhelming. How many proofs do I need before it's statistically impossible that this is a coincidence? And at a certain point, you're just like, well, there's just been hundreds or thousands of these proofs, and they're all pointing in the same direction, and I just can't really deny it anymore. And that's really the situation with the new, particularly with the New Testament of the Bible. It was very obviously written by the Romans. It's a psychological operation. Jesus Christ was a psychological operation. There is no such person, and you need to get over it. And it might take a while to get over it because your whole identity is based on it. A lot of you have tattoos on your physical body that indicate that, and so it's going to be very difficult to get past this one. But the evidence is just overwhelming once you know where you're looking for it. First of all, There's no possible way that the Romans are going to let some uh, in their empire, that they're going to let some document uh, be disseminated that goes against their interests, and or even that is outside of their control. Um, the person that wrote the New Testament is the same person who wrote the works of Josephus, the so-called Jewish um, Roman historian who claims was writing from Caesar's palace and wrote a seven-volume work, War of the Jews, that is a parallel book or intended to be read um, in tandem with the Gospels that he also wrote, or he or she, or I think of it more like kind of probably more like a think tank because there's so much compiled material there in the New Testament um, from all traditions all over the world, the known world at the time. And I'm just envisioning a lot of scholars, intellectuals of the Roman um, Empire, court intellectuals that all work together to put this gospels together. And it's a limited hangout. There's a lot of valuable stuff that's in there. There's a lot of stuff that you can build a religion on in there. But at the very same time, that doesn't mean that it's true. It doesn't mean that the story is true, and it doesn't. And when I hear um, patriots just having these super strong convictions about Jesus, it's humiliating. Uh, I think what you're really talking about is you're talking about God. There is a um, a feeling that you can get inside of you, and there is a an experience that you can have of beauty um, and just some a feeling of guidance that comes from inside of you that you could call God, and that's the experience. But instead, you call it Jesus, and um, that it may be semantics, but it makes a difference because um, that is divisive, really. People who don't believe that, then, I mean, that's the whole reason for Satanism, really, is which also was invented by the Romans. This is, ask yourself why you cling to Satan so strongly, um, because you you almost demand the existence of Satan as strongly as you demand the existence of Jesus. But both of them were created by the Romans, and they were both products of the Romans attempting to destroy Judaism. That was the psychological operation to mellow out the Jews, get them away from their spiritual practices, sacrifice and circumcision, and all of these other things that were very disruptive to the Roman, um, administrators of the empire. And so I really think that we seriously need a wake up call. I'm not out here as a hater, but I do believe that the Satanists that are out there, the reason why they are out there is because they hate Christians, not because they believe in Satan. There's a ton. I've been there. You know, the reason why they do it is because they want to piss you off and they want to trigger you, but it's not that they really believe in Satan. I mean, I'm sure that there is a small group of them that do, and those are the ones that are doing the child trafficking and the pedophilia and everything. But most average people are not, you know, possessed by Satan and not gripped by Satan. They are just trying to piss you off, because your religion is so overbearing. You know, you're always talking about it, and you're always so sure of yourselves about it. And in this case, you happen to be wrong because you haven't done the research. So open up your Josephus, read it alongside your book of Luke. Start in Josephus in book 3, where General Titus, replaces his father, General Vespasian, on the battlefield, and start paying attention to Titus's military campaign, and its parallels with Jesus's ministry. And tell me if all of that is a coincidence. And then once you've done that, you can go into the life of Josephus that he describes and compare that with the life of Jesus that he describes in the Gospels. And then when you've done that, you can go to the book of Revelation and compare the imagery in the book of Revelation with Suetonius, the Roman historian from the 2nd century, his book, The 12 Emperors. Go to the chapter on Domitian, the 12th emperor, and compare the descriptions of his throne room with the descriptions in the New Testament about the imagery that is seen by John. And then when you've done that, then uh, go to your book of Luke and, um, look for all of the non sequiturs, all of the repeated information, and um, start marking off where um, all of the coincidences are, and graph them on a chart, and then see what you get. You don't have to believe me. I'm telling you to go through this experience yourself. And, because this movement is been a great thing, but it's going to be a failure if we don't figure this part out. The we're distracted by the upcoming election and the you know border crisis and all of the potential wars that we can get into, and these things are all important, but I believe that these things have already been worked out, and uh, they're just reenacting the stuff for the masses. But in the meantime, while you're bored about this, while you're like, how absurd is this going to get? Instead of continuing to beat yourself up with this idiocy, really figure out your belief systems, because you haven't done it. You haven't looked at this book. You maybe you know some verses of it, and you've talked to other people about it, but it doesn't pass the smell test if you really read it from cover to cover. I'm not even going to talk about the Old Testament, because that is even worse, and it's not nearly as much of a psychological operation. It's just we've taken that way out of context. But the New Testament is entirely fraudulent. A good portion of the Old Testament is also fraudulent, but there's much of it that is at least true history, or uh, pretty much true history, but it's just being interpreted wrongly by people who are mentally ill and want to put God into everything. And that goes against Occam's razor. Don't put anything supernatural into something that can be explained naturally. And all of this stuff that's in the Old Testament can be explained without uh, resorting to God, because there is no God in the Old Testament except for in the first chapter of Genesis. Then God is replaced by the Elohim, these are not gods. These are highly flawed, powerful, and technologically advanced individuals, flesh and blood. But the New Testament is where most of the problems are, because none of that is true, and it is all there to manipulate you. And it was put there by the Flavian emperors of the late first century, and Flavian means golden. And so that's where we're headed, the golden age, where everybody is hypnotized by this psychological operation. After they thought they figured out all of the psychological operations, there's still this one left, and they're mocking you with it. And that's part of why the boss and the 17th letter aren't telling you about this, and that's why they're treating everybody like children, is because we are children. We have not figured this out. But we, like the emperor has no clothes, we keep talking about it, referring to it, um, you know, wanting other people to talk about it, and flexing our muscles of our faith, and chiding our audience that, oh, you need to get into your faith. What that means when you tell somebody that you need to get into your faith is that you need to abandon truth, because faith and truth are they're not mutually exclusive, but they are, um, you know, at loggerheads. Faith is only reasonable when you have no recourse to truth, when you have no evidence. But if there is evidence, if there are facts, then your faith is really just like your emotions. It's what prevents you from getting into the truth, the facts, the evidence. Okay. But I do love you all, and I appreciate what you've done. And this is just my wake up call. I've been doing this for a very long time, and that's what I see, and so that's what I'm gonna tell you. It's coming from the bottom of my heart. All right, thanks for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, contribute, and remember to watch your blind side.